Oh wow, the new one or the old one? Right. Good evening, everyone. We're going to start. Welcome to TransformGov Talks, event number 10, our October event, our Halloween event. But I promise it's no tricks, all treats for you tonight. I'm Gavin Freegard. I'm one of the organisers of TGT and your host for the evening. A bit of housekeeping before we get underway. Hands up if you've been to TransformGov Talks before. Welcome back. Hands up if this is your first time. Welcome. This is a newish space for people who care about making government work better. And each event consists of a couple of presentations and questions and answers on how to do just that. We are live streaming and on the record. This isn't just about data, digital and tech, though we have quite a data and AI themed event tonight. We've also had lots of people talking about policy making and public participation and lots of other things about making government better. And very importantly, for those of you in the room, there's also free pizza. So please do hang around at the end. If you would like to help us out, we're always looking for organisers, always looking for speakers, and always looking for sponsors as well. Do come and talk to us afterwards or email us on transformgovtalks@gmail.com. A big thank you to our current speakers, Anmut DXW, Holistic Agility, Public Digital and TPX Impact. Those are the people to thank for your free pizzas tonight. And we've also had lots of previous events. These are all of our speakers to date. You can find video, audio, and write-ups and slides and various other things on the TransformGov Talks website. How tonight is going to work, we're going to be treated to 2 brilliant presentations. Each speaker will have about 25 to 30 minutes. They'll present and then we'll go into questions. And if you're in the room, you can put your hands up. For those of you joining us online or indeed in the room but too scared to ask the question in person, you can go to slido.com and the code is 5338014. We'll finish at 7. For those of you in the room, there will be pizza at the back, and then we will head to the pub afterwards, and that will be the Buckingham Arms. Our speakers tonight are going to be Ed Humpherson, the head of the Office for Statistics Regulation, on why transformation has been so challenging for official statistics. We'll then hear from Dr. Lauren Petrie, head of data analytics at the Government Internal Audit Agency, on the GIAA's work with data and AI. A reminder that if you'd like to put questions to our speakers, there are details just outside the room if you'd like to get on the Wi-Fi, so feel free to have a quick look and I think you can scan it. If you'd like to ask questions, again, the Slido code is up on the screen, but you can also scan the QR code. Our next event, we've also got a QR code for that, if you would like to scan it and sign up now. That will be on Wednesday, the 26th of November, and one of our speakers will be Rachel Caldicott from Careful Industries on AI procurement in local government and a new way of doing consequence scanning. So that should be very interesting. And we're also hopefully going to have the December event on the 10th of December. Details to follow on that. But back to tonight. Our first speaker tonight is Ed.
Thank you very much, Gavin, and good evening, everyone. If you were paying attention, you'll have noticed there's a change from the title that you've just seen and this title. I won't ask you if you can spot it. I'll tell you, I put a question mark at the end. Now, that's because normally when I give presentations, I'm a bit of a sort of vain and conceited person, and I like to say big statements like why transformation appears to be challenging for official statistics, and my job is to explain to you the answer I have to that question. The more I prepared this presentation, the more I realized that I am actually here to ask you that question, because I don't really understand. There's something I don't really understand. I'm going to explain the question and then, you know, suggest possibly why I think this might be going on, but you are all people I think are interested or working in transformation, and you might well have better answers. You might disagree with me. So this is sort of like a thing which I'm very tentative about, much more tentative about, frankly, than when I suggested this as a title. So bear with me. Transformation, oh gosh, that doesn't come out very well. That says at the top, what is transformation? There's a dictionary definition, a marked change in form, nature, or appearance. I'm talking about official statistics, and these are the statistics which form the lifeblood of so much of our political debate and news media. Things like inflation or migration or crime or the aging population. Those are all official statistics which are published by government departments, the ONS and others, which seek to inform the public. So very quickly, what's my role? For those of you who don't know me, I head up the Office for Statistics Regulation. We don't produce any statistics, but we do set the standards for how statistics are produced. So when you work in a department, when your department publishes its statistics, it's our job to ensure that those statistics comply with the standards of the code of practice. We will then accredit the statistics if they comply with that code of practice. We do research in how statistics are valued, and the thing that we do, which occasionally gets a little bit of media interest, is we step in if we think statistics are being misused. And in fact, if anybody here works on water pollution, you'll know that we made a statement exactly like that yesterday about a statement by the Secretary of State for the Environment, which was quite questionable. So that's what we do. Why am I even asking this question about official statistics and transformation? Well, here is kind of the thing which has prompted me to be worried. Let's start with UK economic statistics. UK economic statistics are built up to a large degree on surveys. There's lots of surveys. ONS does, and ONS goes out and surveys companies or households, and from those surveys generates insights into the economy. This is a graph which shows over time the declining response rate to a survey called the Living Costs and Food Survey, starting around 70% in 1977 through to 2022, just over 20%. Significant decline, sharp decline, and with it, much more volatile and unrepresentative results. So that's the problem. The answer to a problem like that is to transform what you do, and the ONS has been trying to do that. They've been trying to reframe how they go out and ask people questions, and they've been trying to enrich their surveys with admin data, and it's proven really difficult. Why do I say that? Well, my organization does reviews of statistics, and we've been busy removing the statistics accreditation from a wide range of ONS statistics because they've not been able to do the transformation to address this falling response rates problem. So my first exhibit in why is this a problem is ONS economic statistics. But it's by no means the only one. Population statistics, the census, how we measure the population. There's this perennial question, why do we do censuses? We live in a world full of administrative data. Why every 10 years does the government, through the ONS, need to do a census of the entire population? Lots of other countries don't do censuses, so why do we still need to do them? And this is a screenshot from the BBC in 2011. So what's that, 14 years ago, right? 14 years ago. Will the 2011 census be the last in the current format? I can guarantee you that in 2031, when the census is done, which is broadly speaking going to be in the current format, they'll ask that question again. So there's a recurring thing that, why can't we transform this thing called the census or get rid of it? And my third example is much more local. If there's anybody from HMRC here, I'm sorry for picking on an HMRC example. I could have picked on others. We did a review of the quality of HMRC statistics in 2021, and we said we think there's a problem with the quality of statistics which are drawn from HMRC administrative systems. HMRC undertook to make some changes and some improvements. In 2025, they've just done this a couple of days ago. They've announced a significant error. They found, and this is delightfully described in the media, as finding 2.4 billion down the back of the sofa. That's what the media said, not my words. Exactly in the same space as the review we did in 2021. Again, an example of a transformation that you might have thought was induced by our review and hasn't actually taken place. And there are many other examples of official statistics being hard to transform. So that's my kind of problem case. And I'd like you as transformation scholars and practitioners to give me a sense of why that might be. But just to prime the conversation, I have 4 candidate theories that I'd like to float very quickly. The first candidate theory is this is all a problem of legacy systems. And indeed, the review that I referred to earlier of HMRC highlighted, a bit in bold there, about working with old IT systems which have been built without analytical requirements in mind, and this can create additional obstacles for data extraction and analysis. So it could be that transformation is hard just because the building blocks are built on these old systems with old code that few people understand, and they're very clunky to change. That could be a candidate explanation for why this is all so hard. A second candidate explanation that I'd like to put forward is that there's a rather sort of techno-optimist view that all you need to do is extract data, sort of in a big data sciencey kind of way from administrative data systems, and that will solve all your problems. That's the kind of the census argument. Why do we need a census when we've got all of these automated systems which record every aspect or many aspects of human life? So there's two example questions there that people often ask me. Why can't we just measure all unemployment using benefit and tax data? Well, the reason for that is that reality is messy. If you want to know whether somebody is unemployed, you don't simply need to know whether they're receiving benefits. You also need to know what is their intentions. Are they attempting to participate in the labour market? I'm sure you can all think of people who are not employed, who don't want to be employed. They're not actively in the labour market. You can only find that out by surveying them. Administrative data won't help you understand their intentions. You also miss lots of self-employment as well. Reality is messy. Similarly, and this is the census question, why can't we just measure the population using admin data? Well, one of the most common things that we get from the census is population characteristics, people's religion, their sense of general health, their ethnicity, and you really don't get that in any level of quality from administrative data. It's also very hard to do small area estimation if you don't do a census, incidentally. So maybe transformation is hard because people are asking statistic producers to use it as administrative data, and the admin data is not up to the job because the reality is messy. Third explanation is perhaps this is a problem of perspective. I think that technocrats, policymakers who are a particularly kind of technical bent, regard statistics and data a bit like something, homogeneous block of fuel that you put into a machine and out comes an answer. It's all for informing decisions. And I think this is a very common mindset of policymakers, parliaments, and businesses. But actually, that's a very narrow view of statistics in the public world, because of course statistics do more than inform technocratic high-level decisions. They also allow people to hold governments to account, and there you get some more actors. You get the media and civil society, non-governmental organizations. They become key users of your data, and I think even that is a limited sense of what the public really means in this context, because there's an even bigger question, which is understanding the world in which we live, understanding society, understanding the economy. That's not a technocratic activity, that's a democratic activity. And that triggers an even bigger group of users. You see at the bottom, I've added in citizens, but citizens are not homogenous. There's a vast array of different personas within that citizen band. So if you think of the problem like this, if you focus your transformation at the informing decisions end, we've got to do some transformation because there are some senior decision makers who want data more quickly. You might run into difficulties because you might, to some extent, deliver that, but forget all of these other uses and therefore degrade the quality of what you're doing. And I think a lot of that actually does go on. And I would encourage much more a process of looking at starting at the other end, starting at the broadest possible notion of the public audience and the public user and working backwards. And my final candidate is, there's this famous phrase in transformation, I think it's associated with the big tech companies, which is move fast and break things. I think official statistics producers have to move fast, but not break things. And that's much harder. If you think of inflation, It's not something that's got to be measured every month. It's got to come out every month. It informs the Bank of England decision makers. It informs salary understanding. It informs pricing in lots of parts of the economy. You can't just say, we're just going to try something different, and if it doesn't work, well, we've learned because we've done this experiment. You can't do that because society expects a consistent and solid and reliable flow of information. So your frame of doing transformation is much more constrained. I see it as a world of conflicting demands, which what I've got on the slide. Demand between the latest data methods as near to real time as possible, but having to recognize you're providing an essential service. So those are my 4 candidate explanations. Let's quickly go back through them so you don't forget them. Legacy systems, maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's a question that reality is much messier than the administrative data. Maybe it's that the demand for transformation is too narrow. It's not understanding the broader range of publics. Sorry, got to click through all my animations. Or maybe it's because actually it's really hard to move fast, but not break things. Just to leave you, before I turn to a Q&A, leave you with a final thought. There are lots of success stories in official statistics of transformations, lots. And it's very unfair for me to just focus in on the problem areas. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but very quickly, the ONS has transformed migration statistics in the last couple of years, has not actually been much praised for it, but they've done a great job of completely transforming the data sources, and I think they should be thanked for that. The Department for Education has done an amazing job to do much, much better statistics, or much more comprehensive and real-time statistics on school absence. There's some great enhancements to prices. HMRC, who I had an example of an error, have done a great job with real-time information. And seeing as we're an MOJ, the best project involving data linkage is Data First and Splink. Probably in the whole world, it's the best data project. So if anybody here from MOJ, you can quote me on that. And that is what I wanted to say. But really, I wanted to find out what you all think. So I shall stop there, and you're going to moderate the questions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. As Ed said, we do indeed have time for questions. Again, you can put your hands up in the room. If you're online or indeed offline, you can use slido.com 5338014. Who would like to ask the first question or give the first response to what Ed said? Remember, we are on the record, so do tell us who you are if you can, and wait for me to come with the tiny mic, which makes me feel like a giant.
Love the tiny mic. I'm Fabian Jessel, founder of the Data Alliance, about improving government data sharing. I kind of ask, why do you think this is a problem solely about national statistics? I think the Infrastructure and Projects Authority has 96% of transformation projects red rated. Like, is the problem not more likely to be that we just cannot do transformations in the government the way we have configured it, with all the burdens, reporting requirements, costs, process steps involved? It's just too darn hard to get anything done.
Do you want me to answer each question in turn? What would you? Yeah, well, let's do that. So I recognize that I'm like Plato's prisoner in a cave. All I see is the world that is my frame of reference. The reflections on the wall that I see are official statistics, because that's the world I work in. I have actually worked in broader environments in the past when I was at the National Audit Office, and I think you are right. I think those things are possibly some of those things I'm referring to are universal. So perhaps the only thing which may be less universal is the technocratic certainty versus this broader publics. I think that's probably a bit unique to this context, but I may even be wrong about that. Nice question. Nice question. Maybe fifth candidate is it's not so unusual.
Next question. Oh, we've got one at the front and one at the back. I'll come to the front first. Matt Kellogg, I'm a freelance data scientist, previously a civil service analyst. So some ideas on this from past experience. But I think yeah, your 4 possible causes sort of feel they feel correct to me in terms of the sort of general sort of premise. I think
there's a really big thing around sort of legacy IT, especially in analysis. There's loads of work going on to fix legacy IT in the delivery of public services, and lots of digital transformation has already done that. I think, yes, the lack of inclusion in that of analysts in that causes issues for the data, the admin data being difficult to represent what we want. But I do think there's certainly in a sort of the ability of the analytical community to actually advocate for the sort of technology it wants and needs, and to be given the ability to do the things that you need. Because actually these days, if you're dealing with sort of leading edge data science techniques and stuff like this, you don't have the ability on your government sort of laptop to actually necessarily access all the compute power, have all the right permissions, all those things. So I think there's some real basics about sort of the tech and what we have available to us as analysts in government that sort of isn't in there. And I posit finally one fifth thing that's in there, I think, is connected perhaps to the move fast, don't break things, is just the sort of workload again, the actual, whether there's the time allocated aside for analysts to deliver transformation on top of the day job.
Nice. So in a way, what that is that a fifth explanation could be the voice of analysts is too muted within government, and therefore these problems recur because the things which would make a good analysis don't get built in at the start. Yeah, I would to say one of the reasons I love Splink and Data First so much, for those of you who don't know, this is the MOJ data linkage project, is not just because it's a cool bit of data linkage and works very well. It's that MOJ has these really crummy legacy systems which are, don't really interact and talk to each other very well. And over, this goes to the earlier question actually, over past cycles of government reform, there have been various attempts to create big one database to rule them all solutions, with Accenture, being, I'm not sure if it was Accenture, but let's call them Accenture, being asked to pay, being asked to do this work for, £350 million a year, and nothing ever comes of it. And then the data scientists come in and say, well, what we can do is we can build you an algorithm for like a fraction of that cost, which can actually link these data sets together. So I think it's a really nice bit of transformation actually, because it sort of escapes that legacy constraint.
Can we take the next question from the back?
Hey everyone, my name's Derek, and as of half an hour ago, I'm a free agent. Woot! My question is, and I don't think you touched on it, apologies if you did, we are going through a period of massive change right now in terms of our relationship with truth, with facts, with data, and with information. How is that shift impacting how you view the problems? And if it's not, why is it not? Like, is there a reason why?
I think it is a factor, and it rears its head at 2 points in my talk, although I didn't bring it out explicitly at either point. The first is this phenomenon of people being less willing to respond to surveys, which is a sort of secular exogenous trend. It's nothing to do with what the statisticians are doing, really. It's just a societal phenomenon. I think that may reflect it may be a manifestation of a broader disengagement, right? It could be in that space of citizens feeling disengaged, both with the state, but also with information and data and the general kind of willingness to participate in things like that. And I think it also rears its head in this technocratic certainty versus wider publics, because I think that one of the reasons that the technocratic certainty arises is that it's quite hard for policymakers to engage with the problem of very, very wide and dispersed and plural voices. So they tend to get forgotten. So I think it is sort of lurking across my talk. I didn't bring it out. I think there's probably a whole separate talk about why does an environment of mistrust and misinformation make official statistics harder. I'd love to give that talk next time.
And you'd be very welcome back to do it, Ed. We will come back into the room for another question in a second. I can see there's a hand up already, but 2 questions online. One from Carl Weir. Have you considered the UN Handbook on Measuring Data in the System of National Accounts, which recognises data as an economic asset and includes it in GDP? And we've got a question from Anonymous. Which is ironic given the question, how do you think the new duty of candour will impact on the understanding of the challenge and on the generation of possible solutions?
I think on the first one, I think that's a really, so just so everybody is familiar with this, globally standards are set for economic statistics through a mechanism called the System of National Accounts, SNA, that's what it's called. The latest version, which has been agreed fairly recently, includes the expectation that when statistics offices measure the economy, they include the value of data as an asset, which is it's been a sort of an invisible and intangible asset in the past. To include it as an asset, and there is a school of thought which says that this might actually raise the level of UK GDP quite significantly. We're a very services-rich economy. We might find that we have quite a large and previously unrecognized set of data assets. So does that change things? I think it probably changes a lot in terms of how important we regard data as a society. I think placing a value on something does raise its profile. Whether it makes transformation easier, I think the four candidate answers and the ones that should come up in the room, I think will still be here, even in a world where we're valuing data. And Anonymous asked about the duty of candor. Would that change anything? That's a really interesting question. I suppose you could find examples where greater candor in the admission that transformation is not working might have more helpfully flushed problems out earlier, right? I think you wouldn't need to search too far to find those examples. But I also think it's probably quite a hard duty to enforce. So I'd say let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that the duty of candor does lead to problems being surfaced earlier.
Thanks. I'm going to come to the back of the room for the next question.
Thanks. Maybe I have to clarify something first because I'm not used to it. I'm a civil society community organizer person. I work with collective intelligence tools like Polis and kind of things building on that. And I think a lot about the data of feelings and how that essentially is becoming more important. Our beliefs, not necessarily the facts about us, but our beliefs about things being more important to shaping and understanding the landscape of who we are as a nation and collectives. And like, I'm just curious, my sense is that statistics mostly sees statistics that government hold are mostly taken to be statements of fact about us, or like not the fuzzy things. And we leave that to industry to map, to the economy to map. And I guess I'm just like, my sense is like that much more of the data of feelings and fears and beliefs and all this fuzzy soft stuff is held in private and data broker hands now, and the government is afraid or doesn't feel it's not the purview of government, and maybe there's a little fear of government holding it. So it can't guide us in those ways. And it's my sense from the outside with how I work. I see the way that government essentially wipe clean, or they anonymize stuff and kind of erase us and many parts of us that we need to navigate. And so it's like I struggle to see how government can sometimes be the one who supports us through this because they're too scared to hold what feels.
I'm always sort of really frustrated by an attitude to official statistics, which regards them, official statistics that is, as kind of these hard numbers, which sort of flatten and compress the world it's trying to describe into averages and aggregates and simple summaries, because actually what official statistics are is they're the amalgamation of what the society we are that we live in, and they are full of the richness of people's lives that form the responses. And I just to give an anecdote, I once was in a meeting with a senior financial services executive, and I was talking about a survey that I thought was an important survey about public perceptions. And this person said, I don't want to know about people's perceptions. I want a hard number like GDP. And I was like, dude, if you knew anything about GDP, you'd know it's not a hard number, right? And so so I'm really agreeing with you that I think that there's a huge amount of work which could be done to rediscover the humanity of official statistics and rescue it from this kind of rather sort of pseudo technical. They are gathered. These are data gathered from us as citizens, reflecting us as citizens. So I think there's a lot of mileage in channeling what you've been talking about, actually, if that makes sense.
Thanks. I saw one final hand go up, so a quick question and a brief answer.
Hi, I'm David Durant. I'm one of the organisers. Fifth or possibly sixth option, there's the famous William Gibson quote, "The future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed." So it may be that there's actually a lot of good transformation work going on.
Yeah.
And the difficulty is linking it up. And what the issue is that the government's not investing enough time and money in community building to get the people who are doing the really good work to talk to each other, to share best practice, to bring, one person can lift a crowd if they can pass the information on.
So let's run with that. It's a great idea. What you'd need is a community of people who come together, maybe every fourth Wednesday of the month, to talk about transformation, swap. Is that your sort of idea, with a heavy bit of government funding to keep you in pizza? No, I think it's a really good point. I think government is really bad at community building. Can I have one last point? So that's to agree with your question. One last point, which is whoever works in MOJ, I hate a room where all the fucking clocks are wrong. All 3 clocks. It's so annoying, and they're not even consistently wrong. They're differently wrong. So annoying. So anybody from MOJ here, get onto your facilities people, get them to sort the clocks out. Anyway, that's me done.
And on that unexpected. And our next speaker tonight is Lauren.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for having me. Hopefully, oh no, this won't take me on to my slides.
Oh, yes,
Let
good
me-
point. You have to look away, everybody. These are my, there's loads of them. Sorry. Oh, these are all the rubbish slides that I didn't
I mean, I
use the
could
weekend.
try to talk through those, but I don't
Sorry.
think I'd be very
Sorry.
successful at them. Exactly. Lovely. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for having me. I had kind of posed a question right at the start of his talk, and in the Q&A encouraged you to help answer it. I'm actually going to do something similar, but my questions that I want to know, because I want to get a bit of an understanding of who I'm actually talking to here. So can I get a raise of hands if you've ever heard of the Government Internal Audit Agency before? Okay, that's actually more than I was expecting, so that's fantastic. So, well, maybe the next one will be even easier then. So who thinks they know what internal audit is or what it does? Okay, 1 or 2. I'm impressed. Right, so over to any of you to give this talk here. No, I'm kidding. So I noticed Ed raised his hand here, and I do, what's the first thing you do when you have the honour of seeing your name and you're talking alongside statistics royalty what as Ed? Well, obviously you use a search engine of your choice to look him up. And what did I find when I did that? Well, looking at LinkedIn, I found that we have both worked at the UK National Audit Office before, so at different times. But what I'm sure Ed will be able to talk much more knowledgeably than me about external audit, which is what they do at the NAO. But hopefully I have a slight edge talking about the internal audit that we deliver at the Government Internal Audit Agency. So just to give you some background on us, so for those of you that haven't heard of GIAA before, we are an organisation of around 450 staff who deliver internal audit and counter-fraud services to most government organisations. And I head up the data analytics specialism, and I'm going to talk to you today about the transformation that we're creating both within the agency, but also because of our remit across government, and using data and analysis and AI. And so my team do 3 main things. So we build whizzy AI tools for our auditors. And actually, I gave a talk on that at Data Bytes last week. So in the interests of not boring Gavin, actually, I'm just going to encourage you to go watch the recording of that to hear more about those. But today, I'm going to focus on this second thing that we do, which is around the analytics work to support auditors and counter fraud investigations. I'm not going to talk too much about the third thing that we do, which is around, well, it's the last, but maybe the most important thing we do around actually building kind of data fluency within the organization, except to say that actually it probably is the most important. And one of the things that I think works really well about my team is that we do all three of these things, so that we not only are kind of talking the talk, but we're also walking the walk. And they do link so closely together. My team work primarily in code, so we produce a lot of HTML reports using Quarto. That just allows us to be able to create reproducible and share interactive analysis with others. What I'm going to show you today are just going to be some static outputs of those with some of the key findings, but they just bear in mind they come from interactive reports, and I'm happy to talk to anyone afterwards about how we do that. So, internal audit itself, the one where fewer of you raised your hands as to what it actually is or what it can do. And you're not alone, because this is an actual blog that we have on our gov.uk page around what is internal audit. No, really, what is it? Well, my explanation for this is that we help organisations look at their processes, seeing how efficiently and effectively that they're working. And that could be kind of financial processes or HR processes. Are staff or suppliers getting paid the right amount of money at the right time? You kind of sometimes just assume that will happen automatically, but what happens when it doesn't? Maybe our onboarding or offboarding processes, either giving or taking away access to the right systems. But I want to show you some examples of where we've used data to support an organisation more broadly, and to help give those organisations insight so that we can help them improve what they do. So I'm going to talk through some case studies of work that we've actually done, all anonymised. So we're working with an organisation that had a fleet of vehicles, and this organisation wanted to understand actually how efficiently are our fleet of vehicles being used. And staff in that organisation had the option either to use this fleet of vehicles or to use private hire vehicles. So they wanted to answer these two questions. And so we got from them some data, a kind of calendar looking at all the different, when each vehicle had been booked, a spreadsheet of staff expenses where they claimed for fuel, and then PDF invoices from the fleet provider. And from those three, we were able to join all of those different data sets together and produce data visualizations. So at the top right there, we've got a chart. So this was for the fuel for the fleet vehicles across different locations. The blue bars are the ones that are the kind of cost of the fuel card. The orange bars are the ones where people are claiming the expenses. And you can see that actually across those different locations, that fleet versus private hire is being used very differently. So in location A, actually the blue bar is much higher than the orange bar, whereas location B, that's completely reversed. And similarly, when we look at this, look at the heat map, which effectively is just looking at a little calendar showing where the brightest red are the ones where the fleet vehicles are being used the most. And so we can see for in location B there, actually those fleet vehicles are being used almost all of the time, whereas in location G, they're really barely being used at all. So we were able to do this kind of analysis and give this insight back to the organisation, gave them the opportunity to kind of make decisions around where that fleet was going to be based, but also gave them the code so that they could start doing this analysis themselves and building on that. Another project that we've done last couple of years is around some funding grants. So this was a review that was actually initiated by Secretary of State, because they were wanting to understand why a budget was going to be underspent, and whether the model that was used to calculate the budget was that fit for purpose. And actually this was a really interesting one, because really a lot of it was around the communication of uncertainty in models. And so we did a model review. So we reviewed 2 separate models, relatively chunky models. And then we were also, as well as looking at models themselves, actually another important bit is looking kind of around them. So what are the governance processes? What is the documentation in place? And how are results communicated? And from that, we were able to, we did technical interviews with the model leads, did reviews against the government best practice. So there's been an updated version of the Aqua book out recently, but there's also lots of other good practice from people like DFE and DESNES. And we were able to provide analytical assurance on those different modelling approaches, and when the situation changed, providing some clarity and a clear steer on, was this or was this not the fault of the model, and as well as outlining some strategies to assist with communicating uncertainty. Again, there's lots of great documentation out there around how do you communicate uncertainty in your analysis within government, and gave some detailed feedback to those modelling leads. We've also been involved in some work where we were looking at data quality. So this was specifically around pensions data, where an organisation was wanting to transfer data from one pensions provider to another pensions provider, and they were interested in understanding actually what data quality issues are there within this. So we're looking at vast amounts of data, 38 million rows, 243 data quality tests. The tests themselves weren't necessarily particularly complex, but actually it was just the sheer volume of data that we were dealing with as part of this. And we were able to, and we were working with the Government Actuaries Department on this, so we were writing some code to implement their tests, highlighting where data quality issues are present, and creating some summaries of that, actually then which provided the insight for the organisation into potential difficulties with transferring that data. Another piece of work that we did was around qualification bodies. So an organisation was wanting to understand actually how fairly are inspections distributed. And so we were looking at actually where did these inspections happen? And where were all the providers? And so in this case, we were able to see some geospatial analysis, which shows up terribly on the screen, but I promise you that is meant to be a map of the UK. But what you might be able to make out is that there are some areas of the UK that receive a lot, or a lot higher proportion of providers were visited than in other areas. It will maybe not surprise you that the inspectors were located in those regions where there's a lot more providers inspected. So actually by doing this analysis, we're able to kind of, again, present this back to the client and help them get greater impartiality in those inspections. And maybe lastly, but maybe not, because I can't quite remember how many case studies I included. So we were also helped looking at applications to a government grant scheme. And this one was a lot from the kind of counter-fraud perspective. Actually, there was suspicions that there was a lot of fraudulent applications to this scheme, and the organisations might have been just being set up for the purpose of applying for this money. And did those organisations have any links to one another? So we got some text and information about the applicants and the text that they submitted, and we were also combined that with information and data from the Companies House API. And from that, we were able to do some network analysis. So actually, looking at similarities between the text in between applications, and looking at that Companies House data to look at actually where did those companies share directors, And from that, building that graph on the right, where the blue dots are the companies and the green dots are the directors. And apologies, the lines between them probably aren't showing up particularly well, but it turned out there was a high degree of overlap between the companies that had similar directors and the companies that were submitting very similar copy and paste type applications to this scheme. And then we could also link that up with when were the companies set up. So we were able to quickly uncover potential abuse of grants. There is one more. Perfect. So the last one is a maybe more standard thing that people might think of when they think of internal audit, which is around this kind of staff onboarding. So the kind of processes, the HR corporate processes that will be going on within every organisation in government. So the organisation was wanting to understand, this was they were looking across several different organisations, and they were wanting to understand how long does each stage of that onboarding process take. I don't know about you, sometimes you might find you're waiting ages to hear back from an application, and other times it's very quick. Are all of those stages being done in a logical and consistent order? And are they all actually recorded in the system that was designed to capture them? So we had data detailing onboarding of around 8,000 staff, and we're able to validate some of the issues with something called process mining. So looking at actually how does data flow for a process. So for this one of the departments, pretty much everything was being done in a nice logical order. Everyone kind of flows from one step in the process logically to the next. In this second department, not so much. We've got things going, arrows going all over the place, different things starting in different places, looping round. So we're able to calculate the number of missing and out of sequence events, as well as how long people were spending, possibly being delayed within that system, and then providing a subset of cases that could be investigated further. So yes, I think that is finally me. So apologies, I don't have a grand question to leave you on like Ed does, but I hope that's given you kind of a better understanding of what internal audit is and what it does and the fun things it does, and B, just gives you some kind of inspiration of different types of analysis that we do within government, and that you could apply to your work.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Again, any questions? Raise your hand. We've got one straight up there, and we've got three in the room. I'm going to go back first, and I'll come forward.
Thank you, John Mortimer. The question I have is, with regard to audit, you've shown us a lot of data and a lot of information that's based on data. Let's take the last example where you described two organizations, one that followed their processes very well and one that didn't. How able are you, or are you interested in actually understanding, let's say on the second organization, whether they did that for good reason?
Yes, I think that's a great point. I should stress that. So my team, we support audits. So we'll provide the data analysis, which can often then provide the insights and the questions for the auditors, who then go in and have a look at these processes that speak to the people involved, that actually get that human touch that I think we were talking about earlier. It feeds into the wider thing. And yes, sometimes there may be good reasons why people aren't following a process if it's a poorly designed process in the first place, and that absolutely would be something that our auditors would look at as part of the wider audit. The idea of the analysis is just sometimes to give them an idea of, because if they didn't have that, they wouldn't know that people weren't following the process. So it gives them an idea of where to start.
Yeah, hi, my name is Manny. I'm former civil servant. My question to you is, with GIAA, and I deal with them quite a lot, how regularly do the organizations actually follow your recommendations? Because I know you tell them what they need to do, but do they do them, and do you actually follow that up with the boards?
Great question. Yes, so on the back of every audit report that we produce, we have recommendations or kind of management actions, and those do get followed up on a regular basis, and they do get raised at the audit committees. We try to work with organizations as much as possible throughout the audit, so that A, none of the recommendations that we recommend at the end are complete surprises to them, but also B, they're manageable and actually they integrate well within what we do. And I think what we've found, certainly on some of the kind of more data heavy audits, is that actually when we're working with analysts, they're very receptive, because it can give them impetus to do sometimes the things that they've always wanted to do but never quite got buy-in for. I don't have to hand stats on what proportion of recommendations are either fully or partially implemented, but we certainly try and make those recommendations as tailored and as useful to the client as possible.
So we've got a question at the front, and then we've got one at the back.
James from One Team Gov North. How much of your work is reactive versus proactive? And if you do some of the latter, how do they react when you turn up?
In terms of when it's proactive, how do people respond? So, great question on how much is reactive versus proactive. I think because of maybe the nature of internal audit and how kind of an audit plan is determined, it's a very risk-based. So it will be looking at areas where either something has maybe gone wrong, or there's a kind of indication that this might be a risky area and things might go wrong. I mean, I'm going to do a shout out to all of the HI heads of internal audit out there, that we would love to be involved with lots more proactive audits. And I think sometimes we do help uncover ideas, but yes, there is this kind of interplay between what, in terms of a risk-based approach, where is best value for money for us to be spending our money on an audit. And so the client and the head of internal audit will be working together on that.
Hey, Pat Kahn again. I guess I'll say I'm from Civic Tech Toronto is my identity from this question, where there's a kind of a boundary culture of a lot of public servants and citizens. And I'm always interested in how certain tasks or opportunities can be kind of laundered between the sides to the side that can hold it best, because government isn't good at doing certain things. But I guess lately I've been thinking a lot about surprise and the role of surprise, because it's like the feeling of that we have, which you don't need a degree in surprise, but it's the feeling of your models breaking, like of something, the thing you thought you knew, there's a lie in it and you've just discovered it. And my understanding is power does not like to be surprised. It's like a scary thing. So most of what power does, and including governments, the good power, is try to not be surprised. And so I see this process as a process to be surprised internally, so we cannot be surprised externally, which will make us look foolish and be drama. But I'm like kind of curious, like I guess I'm kind of curious whether there's any role in this work for like citizens who are passionate, because like the data can't go outside, but can the shape of the data go outside? Like I had a civic hacker friend who worked, I'll leave it after this, but a public servant who was like, their genius idea was like, let's make FOIA requests for all the database structures of all the critical systems. And then we can just once we know the structure, we can figure out what questions we should ask, or we can figure out like which parts are always safe for us and cheap for us to ask. And then we can like do cool things with it. Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a way that you can imagine citizens doing any of the labor that you do and kind of figuring out the hard questions, to find the surprises, but as a partnership and maybe like an exciting outside opportunity to like see the shape of the hard questions that might be a surprise that we all want to learn. We all want to like fix our models. Anyway, yeah, thanks.
God, that was such a great question that I don't really think I have a good answer for it at all. Yeah, trying to actually involve citizens more in what an audit is. I think there is an element of actually the FOIs that people raise can feed into audit plans. If you've got lots of freedom of information requests on a certain area and a department sees that could be something that feeds in. At the moment, I don't have any other instant great ideas, but I will keep on mulling that over, and we can maybe chat more later.
I'm going to go online for the next question. This is from Carl Weir. He says, you mentioned the inspectors. Are you considering AI agent inspectors? And I appreciate that was a project that you were looking at another department, but I wonder if you have anything you want to say about AI, apart from you should definitely watch Data Bites from last week.
Yes, great question. So as you said, Gavin, the inspectors we were talking about there were from another organization. Our auditors are brilliant and very knowledgeable, and actually the approach we've taken is to build tools to enable them rather than trying to replace their fantastic knowledge and expertise. And yeah, I really don't think there's anything more to say except go watch Data Bites from last week.
Excellent. Any final questions in the room? We've got one at the back.
Hi, I'm Sarah Habib. I study at the Institute of Innovation and Public Value, and I've been looking more into studying what evaluation is and what ex post evaluation looks like in different contexts. And I had a question for you regarding the like shared interest of auditing and evaluation, and how you saw your works in terms of the final product that you're giving to a state, but also in terms of understanding how things sometimes go wrong and how to fix them. Thank you.
Another great audience questions here. I have to say, really, really strong. So I guess from my perspective, like my team, when we're doing an audit, we're sometimes doing it solely in the data space, but we're sometimes doing it in the model review space. We're sometimes doing it more in the evaluation space. Sometimes doing kind of more qualitative analysis rather than quantitative analysis. So from my perspective, I think what we would try and do whenever we saw opportunities for evaluation, we would always encourage teams to be thinking about that. One of our tools that we've got, the Insights Engine, actually allows our auditors to search through lots of different guidance, including some of the evaluation guidance across government. I would say, we do a lot of internal evaluation as well for our own tools. There's possibly opportunities for more work in that space, because there is, as you say, there's this kind of strong interplay between an audit of what's going on and what's happened versus that evaluation as well. There are lots of similarities.
Lauren, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
A few quick parish notices from me before I release you to the evening or to pizza if you're in the room. A few other events that you might be interested in. Data Bites 60 at Public Digital is happening on the 18th of November. As Lauren mentioned, she spoke at the most recent one last week. Do go and check that out. Really brilliant overview of some of the AI-assisted tools that GIAA is working with. If you're interested in public participation around data and AI, the next Connected by Data Community of Practice is on the 19th of November. We'll be hearing from various speakers, including around Home Office projects and I think the Office for National Statistics as well. And if you're interested in Catherine Day, who spoke at a previous TransformGov talks, she's now launching something called the National Strategy Project. If you would like to find out more about that, you can scan the QR code on your screen at the moment. And I will speak quite slowly because I can see a lot of you with mobile phones out while you scan that particular QR code. Good. I think that's everyone done on that. A quick reminder that our next event here at PGT will be on Wednesday, the 26th of November. Rachel Caldicott on AI procurement in local government and consequence scanning, and another brilliant speaker to be confirmed. Again, the QR code is there if you want to sign up right now. You can, of course, also sign up for the TransformGov Talks newsletter on transformgov.org.uk. If you'd like to help us out, organise, speak, sponsor, come and talk to us afterwards, or transformgovtalks@gmail.com. If you'd like to help us out, you can also just tell someone how much you enjoyed the talks tonight and encourage them to sign up on the website as well. Please do spread the word. We are trying to build a community and especially get to lots of people in the public sector and people adjacent to the public sector. So do tell everyone how much you enjoyed, and do join me in thanking everyone who came tonight and some brilliant questions, but also 2 brilliant speakers. Thank you very much indeed, Ed and Lauren. And for those of you in the room, the pizza has magically appeared at the back.
Nice to meet you.
I don't want whispering.
Still too quiet.
Maybe it'll get picked up. That was brilliant. Yeah.